The tropics mostly quiet except for this new tropical wave near the Yucatan Peninsula that has a chance of developing in the next 5 days. Our team of meteorologists are breaking down the latest models live here on Track in the Tropics. Hey there, everybody. JB Buno here with our regular episode, Wednesday afternoons here on Track in the Tropics, being joined, of course, by our team of meteorologists here in the Stream Center, Storm teammates Ian Oliver and Julie Phillips. And first time to the program as well, joining us from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Chief Meteorologist Jesse Gunkel, a 12-year weather veteran in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, including storms covered, including Gustav, Ike, Isaac, and Harvey. Guys, I want to get right into it here. We're talking about this new tropical wave that we're looking at here on our screen. Nothing really too serious yet. Remember the show, of course, about educating people out there, keeping everybody aware to everything both small and big throughout the tropics. But Ian, we'll start off with you here. This is a new tropical wave that we're monitoring here with a small chance of developing in the next few days to come.
Yeah, JB, that's something important to point out. This just popped up this morning. This isn't something that we've been watching for the last several days. In fact, over the last several days, it's been nice and quiet. We needed a little cool down period after here in the Tampa Bay area. We got indirect impacts from Nestor that featured heavy rainfall, a number of confirmed tornadoes across the Tampa Bay area. So yes, this morning, the National Hurricane Center did identify a new tropical wave, an area to watch for possible tropical development. And it's a tropical wave. Right now, it's situated essentially, I'll get this advanced for you, right above Belize, moving into the Yucatan Peninsula, northern part of Guatemala. That's the latest fix on it right there. It's not expected to develop in the short term. You notice the next 2 days, the development chance from the National Hurricane Center, 0%. It's going to be over land. This isn't something we're concerned about in the short term. It's when it moves out into the Gulf of Mexico over those very warm sea surface temperatures. There's a low chance that we could see some tropical development with this system, but overall, long term, it likely won't have much success as it runs into a cold front that's going to be moving into the Gulf of Mexico. So that's a pretty common theme this time of the year for systems that do try to get their acts together. In the Gulf of Mexico, they have to deal with some wind shear, troughs, fronts that move into the Gulf of Mexico. Those are always features that we have to watch this time of the year. But the issue, of course, is the sea surface temperatures in the Gulf. They're still slightly above average for this time of the year. This is where we expect disturbances to develop as we head on through the month of October. Warm sea surface temperatures, western parts of the Caribbean, parts of the Gulf of Mexico, and out into the Gulf Stream. That's where we look for possible tropical development. So is this unusual? Not at all. Sea surface temperatures, Julie, those are pretty warm, low and mid 80s across portions of the Gulf. So it's something to watch, the tropical moisture for sure.
Absolutely. And like you said, while right now the chances are only about 30% of development, sometimes those disturbances can help if they kind of get absorbed by a cold front that moves into the Gulf that can aid in raising some of the rain chances, add some extra moisture, so that front can maybe produce some more showers and storms across portions of the southeast. As we head into the weekend and into next week, you can see right now, though, again, just one area we're watching. We're heading into the later portions of the season, but in October, we can still see tropical activity, even late in October.
And I know we're going to be talking a lot about that, but Jesse, you're a little bit closer to this system right now in Baton Rouge. You guys are monitoring this as a potential rainmaker for you guys, right?
Yeah, again, it's kind of one of those things just as scheduled. You know, when you start looking at weather patterns, we have the state fair, and guess what? We've always had that cold front kind of arrive. We had it push through Tuesday, and we even started out with some of the coldest temperatures we've seen since late April 22nd. We dropped into the 40s, and that, again, is even a little bit unusual for us. So that front pushed through, and obviously we've got another one barreling down towards the southern Gulf as we enter the weekend. And that is going to be one of those things that help to steer and drive a lot of that moisture that you see down in the southern Gulf, the Bay of Campeche there, what's very unorganized. Well, a lot of that moisture is eventually going to get sucked northward up towards the northern Gulf Coast, and that is actually going to be our concern because a lot of that moisture is going to be absorbed. Steering winds are going to drive this system more so towards the east. We're talking towards New Orleans and probably towards the Panhandle, but there is that potential just around Lake Charles, which is towards our far western half of the state. That's kind of halfway between the Houston and Baton Rouge area. A lot of areas could see anywhere from 4 to maybe even 6 inches of rain locally. The models are quickly allowing those rain totals to jump at this point. So yeah, we could be seeing, we could be concerned more so about localized flash flooding as we move a little bit forward. obviously for portions of southwestern Louisiana and even southern, mainly coastal parishes for us. But yeah, it's going to jump to a rainmaker versus an actual. I'm not too concerned even here with tropical storm force winds, tropical disturbance winds, anything like that. The winds aren't going to be really a factor. Maybe our tides could go up a little bit by a foot to a foot and a half. I think that's about it once all this system actually, if it does indeed develop, as it moves a little bit closer to our coastline.
So mostly, Jesse, you're just saying you're a popular guy in Baton Rouge with that forecast for the State Fair this week.
Yeah, you know what? It's nice because it's cool because you don't sweat that. But yeah, we got to deal with a little bit of rain for opening day, which is going to be kind of awful.
It's a tough gig sometimes. It can be a thankless gig. It's tough. You got to just give the forecast as it is.
You're going, okay, well, yeah, it'll be nice and cool once that front passes. But you maybe need those what we call our Louisiana mud boots. You know what I mean?
What do we got going? We got some activity popping up on the screen here. Julie, I'm going to bring up this graphic, and I'm going to go click out of whatever that is. This is a graphic talking a little bit about what we expect as we move into the new month of November. So some good news there. There we go. It actually crisis averted. It went away. So this is a graphic that I was just taking a peek at. It's from it's from NOAA, actually, the Hurricane Research Division. And what this is they're taking a look back over the period of record, which is going back to 1851 at least through 2018. Now, of course, those records get a whole lot better once we get into the satellite era. But this is essentially what we're looking at for average numbers of storms once we move into November. So we talk about how hurricane season runs all the way through November 30th. The most active months being August and September, and then how quickly we start to see activity kind of throttle back, if you will, moving into November. In a typical November, we get a little better than half a tropical storm, if you want to call it that. So maybe one every 2 years, probability-wise. Hurricane, that goes down to 1 in every 4 years, 1 in every 3.5 or so. And then for a landfalling hurricane, that is a very small chance in November. 3% essentially. So those are some low chances, Jesse, once we get past this period, which October still can be a pretty active month.
Yeah, it usually is. I call it front season now for us. I mean, most of the time, all those fronts from the summer months to even early fall, a lot of those fronts kind of slide a little bit north of South Louisiana. However, as soon as we start getting into mid to late October, they start driving through. And that's what's going to keep a lot of these storms away from our northern Gulf Coast. And I still remember back in the past, we've had hurricanes or even some storms in even as early as late, I guess, as December. So again, there still is that possibility. I never wanted people to kind of let their guard down quite yet. There's always that individual storm that could be that outlier. So again, a lot of times when you start looking at numbers too, you got to have that game plan and you got to be able to put it into action whenever at this point. So again, there's always that possibility, but the odds, obviously, as you can see here by the numbers, they quickly drop.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things I want to note here, too, is just the strength, the potential strength of a hurricane that we would get this time of year. It looks like it pretty significantly tapers off, right, in Julie, because we're talking about the strength of a landfalling hurricane being about 3%, a hurricane itself being about 28%, but the chances of us seeing, that major hurricane this time of year, probably less than you would get in a June, July, or August, right?
The chances are lower, but it's not zero.
Right, so, it's not out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah,
right.
Back in 2005, for folks that were living in Florida, you may remember Wilma. Mm-hmm. Wilma actually made landfall on October 24th. So very late in the season, that was a significant hurricane. So major hurricane. So it's definitely not something that we can't always see. So folks in South Florida significantly remember that storm. It rapidly developed and definitely caused some problems in South Florida and then moved out into the Gulf. So that was a system that, is very late in the season and is still fairly recent and very memorable if for Floridians.
And amazingly, there's a number of ways that you can kind of describe the strength of a tropical system. And if you describe it by minimum central pressure, that's the strongest there ever was in the Atlantic Basin. Minimum central pressure, 882 millibars. So, strong storms can exist this time of the season. It's just highly unlikely, thankfully.
And it doesn't have to be the strongest storm to make an impact on your neighborhood or your community. We just had Tropical Storm Nestor roll through the Panhandle, the southeastern United States here in the state of Florida, but yet we had some interesting activity in Polk County, right here in Tampa Bay, right, Evan? I mean, Ian, excuse me. I mean, looking here at some
Julie
of the drone video.
Tracking that's unbelievable.
Yeah, it was really, something else. We were pretty far removed from the center of the system. It was only a tropical storm, and this storm was able to add increased wind shear across our area. This is all of the video from, we had an EF2 in Polk County, which for us in Florida, EF2s are significant. We get a lot of smaller tornadoes that develop EF0s, maybe some EF1s, but EF2s are definitely not something that we see all the time here. And that tropical system, even though we were far enough from it, it has enough wind shear that produced not just an EF2, but also an EF0 in Pinellas County. So it was... Yeah.
Want to remind people the video that you're looking at here, this is from this past week with the damage that we saw, some of the worst damage that we saw in Polk County, Florida. That's right here in the Bay Area. So not to be confused with what might be going on today. This is not from today. This is from several days ago as we were monitoring what was going on there in Polk County. So, guys, I mean.
And I do point out, too, when you start looking at stuff like that, even for us here in South Louisiana, you got to start looking at things like rain totals for a lot of areas. Again, those isolated tornadoes that kind of spawn off some of these feeder bands, but that heavy rainfall. And for us here in South Louisiana, it's not, I guess, atypical for us to even talk about the possibility of maybe getting 10 to 15 inches of rainfall as a system comes through. And that's where we're kind of have to focus. Obviously, we're not going to see that amount of rain with this system coming in, but again, there are a lot of areas, and we dealt with Hurricane Barry earlier in the year. A lot of areas did see, anything 10 plus inches of rainfall. Now, again, it's a little bit easier for us to handle that because we have bayous down here and swamps to handle a lot of that water. But still, that is a lot of water for a lot of locations, and it's just hard for that water to go somewhere.
Guys, looking here at the 2019 Atlantic season names for tropical cyclones. Ian, we were talking about this graphic off stream. Julie, we were talking about Nestor being the last one just a moment ago, and now Olga, Pablo, and Rebecca looks like are next up on the list. We are hoping that we don't see an Olga, Pablo, or Rebecca, right? We don't want to get too far down into the alphabet here.
Yeah, 14 named storms now. You're taking a look at that list. You talk about an average season. It's roughly 12, 6, 2.5, and we've got 14 now. It's an above average season. We've had a number, 2 Category 5 storms this season and another major in Umberto. It's been a significant season, and hopefully one that is really starting to wind down a bit.
All right, everybody. So again, if we don't know exactly what's going to happen in the days to come, but we do know that the new tropical wave that is down there by the Yucatan Peninsula right now, it does have a 30% chance of developing in the next 5 days. We're going to be keeping a close eye on it here on Track in the Tropics. Before we say farewell for our Wednesday episode here, we'll give the floor one more time to Chief Meteorologist at WVLA in Baton Rouge, Jesse Gunkel. Jesse, hey, thanks for joining the program. I know you're going to be keeping a close eye on this wave, and hopefully the State Fair gets a little bit of a good break in the days to come.
Yeah, that's always one of the issues. It's always a rainy but somewhat cool start for us here. And I just want to say, looking at, you're looking at the tropical cyclone names, this kind of reminds me a lot of 2012. We actually got to that same year, and that was the same year that we had Isaac, Tropical Storm Isaac. Very similar to what we saw with Barry. It was a rainmaker for a good portion of Louisiana, and it was kind of a slow-moving system that really just kind of dumped that rain over a couple days. So, yeah, as you see here, it's probably that same type of pattern. And luckily, hopefully we follow that same scenario, that the last letter will be O, and we'll be done with this season so far. So thanks again for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, guys, you can catch him on WVLA in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Chief Meteorologist Jesse Gunkel joining Track in the Tropics. Everybody, for Storm Teammate Meteorologist Julie Phillips and Ian Oliver, you can catch right here on WFLA in Tampa Bay. I'm JB Buno. Thanks for joining us here on Track in the Tropics. We will have more episodes if there is continued development with this tropical wave, but otherwise, hopefully, we'll be back on Wednesday, 1:30 Eastern, 12:30 Central, with our regularly scheduled episodes. So for the entire Track in the Tropics team, thanks for being with us. We'll see you soon. Take care.
Thank you for watching Tracking the Tropics.